Hello there, Phil 258 students. This is a final video class that I'm providing, and I'm going to be talking here about so-called just war theory, or the just war tradition. And the just here has to do with justice. What is it to fight a war justly or ethically, roughly speaking? And this is optional for those of you who just wandered in kind of aimlessly. This is optional. No question on the final about this or anything like that. But I felt a professorial obligation just to kind of offer one more video class to those students who are interested. And I'm going to be fairly quick about certain things, but I'm going to tie in certain issues involving military ethics and the ethics of self-defense as we go along. And this is going along with this nice reading in the 1,000-word philosophy anthology, Just War Theory by Ryan Jenkins. And I'm just going to read a couple of sentences before I go back to my slides. So he begins this by saying, "War is a profoundly destructive institution, yet most of us still believe there are good wars. Authors as far back as Cicero, and in various cultural traditions, have sought to answer this question: when is a war just? The just war tradition, or just war theory, is one subset of military ethics." Okay, maybe I will stop that now. And then he talks about traditional just war theory. He says it concerns itself with two questions. The first one is, when is it just to go to war? And the second one is, how may a war be justly fought? And in other words, once it has begun. These two areas usually go by their Latin names, jus ad bellum and jus in bello, justly fought, respectively, justice in fighting. This way we can say that a war was just to declare, but fought unjustly, or perhaps vice versa. And that's kind of important. We might think that if a nation was attacked, then and they declare war, it was justly declared. But then if their soldiers are planting landmines and killing civilians, it's not justly fought. Okay, so that's the kind of rough idea, and I'm going to kind of go through that and tie in with individual self-defense. So what he was just talking about, often called jus ad bellum, rules for going to war, and I'm going to kind of discuss these more specifically in a moment. But the idea in general is that declaring war is widely agreed to be similar to self-defense. The nation declaring the war must have good reason or just cause, and going to war should be a last resort. When it comes to conduct in war, this is that jus in bello, the rules are kind of more controversial, and we'll sort of end with a few recent disputes over this. But here issues involve the use of proportionate force, who may be targeted. Is it okay to target civilians or military doctors and so forth? Okay, so here's a list, and by the way, Jenkins talks about this kind of when is it just to go to war here, but I'll kind of talk you through them a little bit. So the first rule is often called just cause. So a state may launch a war only if it has a just cause, and this is pretty much universally seen in terms of national self-defense. Traditionalists think that the state going to war has to have the right intention. So the idea is the just cause, in other words, the the fact that you're under attack, you've been attacked, or your national sovereignty is at risk. This must be the motivation for going to war. So even if your nation is attacked, the idea is your motivation for going to war can't be to loot and seize treasure from the other side. The motivation has to be the fact that you've been attacked and you have to defend your national self-interest. Okay. Proper authority. The decision to go to war must be made by a legitimate authority. Usually, traditionally, this has been government, the state government. By state here, I mean national government. And there's kind of interesting political issues here. I don't know if you guys remember, but here he talks about only a proper authority can declare war in traditional just war theory. It is for this reason, for example, that Kofi Annan, the former Secretary General of the United Nations, suggested that the United States' 2003 invasion of Iraq was illegal. Under international law, a war must be authorized by the UN in order to be legal, and all other threats or uses of force are illegal. So here we have sort of a combination of moral and social political, kind of factors working in conjunction, in tandem. Okay, it must be a last resort, so a state may go to war only after exhausting all plausible alternatives to war, such as diplomatic efforts. Proportionality, the universal goods expected from war must be proportional to the evils. Okay, so the good of maintaining national sovereignty has to be proportional to the evils of, for example, death and destruction due to the war. And a traditional theory, we might, be skeptical about some of these, but according to the traditional theory, a state may go to war only if it has a reasonable chance of success, of winning the war. So probability of success has been held traditionally to be a criterion, a necessary criterion for going to war justly. Okay. So here's a little quotation from that same article. Theorists usually think the only just cause for declaring war is self-defense, that is, as a response to an actual aggression. Preemptive war, declaring war on a state because it's believed they will be a threat, is clearly a Pandora's box. You could look that up if you don't know that phrase. Instead, we must meet a high evidential burden in order to justify war, and a merely suspected attack is not enough. Okay, and this is a very controversial, interesting issue. Of course, a completely unjust invasion is, it's not a just declaration of war. I mean, think of Nazi Germany's invasion of Poland, for example, near the beginning of World War II. But the idea of a preemptive strike, where one nation is maybe building up militarily inside their own borders, and there's intelligence that they're going to attack you. The traditional theory is it's not just to declare war unless there has been an actual aggression against. Okay, and the connection here has to do with individual self-defense. In ethics, here's an interesting question. When is it morally permissible and morally right to kill another person in defense of your own life? And here's a natural account of the conditions under which it's morally permissible. So according to a natural account of self-defense, it's morally permissible, acceptable, for you to kill another person in defense of your own life when the other person will kill you unless you stop him. Okay, so the idea here is it really has to be defense of your own life. If the other person is merely going to bruise you, it wouldn't be okay to kill that person. So the other person's going, and you can stop him only by killing him. And that's if someone was attacking me, about to kill me, but I could stop this person by spraying him with a garden hose or something, then it would be wrong for me to kill him. So if the only way to stop him is by killing him, the idea is that's necessary. So here's a natural account of when self-defense is acceptable. Do you remember a name that came up when we were thinking about the ethics of abortion? Judith Jarvis Thomson, American moral philosopher and metaphysician. She had that famous violinist thought experiment and a framework involving rights and what a right to life is in the ethics of abortion. Well, she also wrote a fantastic paper in 1991, and the paper is called Self-Defense. And I'm just going to read just a couple of sentences here. Here's how she starts the article. Before we take a close look at it, we may think of self-defense as morally transparent. What could be clearer than that morality permits a person to save his or her life against threats to it? But what if, in order to save one's life, one has to kill another person? In some cases, that is obviously permissible. In a case I will call villainous aggressor, you are standing in a meadow, innocently minding your own business, and a truck suddenly heads towards you. By the way, Judith Thomson is well known for these kind of, in some sense, outlandish but very vivid examples. You try to sidestep the truck, but it turns as you turn. Now you can see the driver. He is a man you know has long hated you. What to do? You cannot outrun the truck. Fortunately, this is not pure nightmare. You just happen to have an anti-tank gun with you and can blow up the truck. Of course, if you do this, you'll kill the driver, but that does not matter. It is morally permissible for you to blow up the truck, driver and all, in defense of your own life. Okay, now, having an anti-tank gun on you while you're standing in a meadow is a little bit strange, but you kind of get the idea here. Morality permits the person whose life is at threat here to kill the other person if that's the only way of stopping the other person, the villainous aggressor, from killing you. Okay. By the way, so I'm gonna talk here about this natural account of self-defense, right, where it's okay to kill someone when the other person is going to kill you unless you stop him, and you can stop him only by killing him. Okay. Here's a little passage from later on in that same essay. Consider villainous aggressor, for example. You have an anti-tank gun, and it is permissible for you to blow up the truck. What if the villainous driver has his own anti-tank gun and can use it on you so that you cannot use your anti-tank gun on him? Is it permissible for him to do this? I should think it obviously impermissible for him to do this, even if it is the case, since he will in fact continue to drive toward you in his truck, that you will shoot him unless he shoots you. Okay, so now his life is at risk because you have your anti-tank gun aimed at him, and you can shoot before he reaches you with his truck. Okay, bizarre, but this, I think, Thompson calls a fighting back, the fighting where the aggressor is sort of fighting back against your attempt to defend your life. Okay, so it would be wrong, quite clearly, for the villainous aggressor to shoot you in defense of his own life when he sees you point your gun at him, even though those two conditions of the natural account are satisfied. You'll kill him. Now you're kind of the aggressor. You'll kill him unless he stops you, and he could stop you only by killing you. Okay, so since it's not right, it's not permissible for the villainous aggressor to shoot you with his anti-tank gun in defense of his own life, the natural account fails as a general account of self-defense, even though it's a very attractive first start and applicable in almost all cases. Okay, Thompson herself brings in rights, moral rights, to the rescue. So I'm going to be kind of quick on this. I'm fairly quick to finish up as well. So why is it permissible for you to kill the villainous aggressor? Okay, well, the idea is he forfeited his right that you not kill him. Okay, that's the idea. In trying to kill you, in aiming to kill you, he no longer has a right that you not kill him. In some sense, he forfeited his right to life. At the very least, against you, that you ought not kill him. But why is it wrong, on the other hand, for him, the villainous aggressor, to kill you in self-defense, for example, with his anti-tank gun? Well, the idea is you still have a right. You have a right that others not kill you. You have not forfeited that right, and he would be violating your right to life. Okay, and by the way, Thompson thinks this is why it's wrong to kill innocent bystanders too. Okay, we might imagine a case where someone is going to shoot you, and there's nothing you could do to kill the perpetrator, but maybe you could use an innocent bystander as a human shield, right? You could use an innocent bystander and let them take the bullet instead of you, right? Well, that presumably would be wrong. It might be excusable in some sense or understandable, but it seems to many people it's wrong that when the bystander is not threatened themselves, right? And the idea here is it's wrong for you to kill the bystander because the bystander has not waived any right to life. Okay, so similarly, but importantly different to that natural account, according to Judith Thompson, it's morally okay for you to kill another in defense of your own life when the other person will kill you unless you kill him. Okay, again, if you can stop him without killing him, it's not okay to kill him. And if the other person kills you, he's going to violate your right that he not kill you. So this makes it wrong for the aggressor to kill you, to shoot back at you in self-defense. because if you kill him, you're not going to violate his right. If that makes sense. Okay, so in any case, just a kind of interesting detour, and I think a lot of the morality of self-defense is extremely relevant at the foundation of just war theory. So this is a slide I showed you before, and I just highlighted three things in green because they're kind of very at the forefront of this account of self-defense. Think about just cause. A state may launch a war only if it has a just cause. I think here, the just cause is your right. Your right to life is about to be violated. That gives you a just cause to act. And here, the last resort, the number 4, the last resort, that kind of comes in. Unless you kill him, right? Killing him is a last resort to saving your own life here. And finally, proportionality, just going back to that, proportionality is, the other person's going to kill you, right? The other person is not simply going to step on your toe or anything like that, in which case lethally attacking them, killing them in return is not proportional. But if they're going to kill you, then killing them is proportional. So anyway, this classic account of self-defense is extremely strongly related to maybe the most important rules for going to war in the just war theory. Okay, I'm going to finish up with much more quickly here with rules for conduct in war and just some thoughts about recent trends, recent issues. Okay, so here in Jus in Bello, here's some rules for conduct in war. Necessity, so violence must be necessary for achieving a strategic goal. If your army could achieve a strategic goal without killing soldiers, the idea is you should pursue that strategy rather than killing, for example, rather than violence. Combatants, so violence must be directed only against those liable to be attacked. That's a common phrase. So not against innocent civilians, for example. And there's all sorts of interesting issues here that I'm not going to go into in this video. And proportionality, so soldiers must use force that is proportional to the outcome that is sought. So another kind of intuitive idea that the good sought must be at least as weighty as the evil inflicted. Okay, I'll just mention real quickly one other one that's often I didn't put this on my slide, but any weapons mala in se, bad in themselves, are prohibited. So, or weapons or actions that are in some sense bad in themselves. I don't know. Some people would put nuclear weapons in this in this category, or chemical weapons or biological weapons. Okay, so we could add that as number 4. No mala in se. No, nothing. Weapons that are bad in themselves. Okay. I'm just going to end with what Jenkins, that author, calls some emerging issues. So here's just one quotation, and I'm going to just finish up real quick. A collection of objections found in the so-called revisionist work of Jeff McMahon, Rodin, and others is currently roiling the just war community. Central to this conflict with traditional just war theory is the moral equality of combatants. Traditionalists, along with international law, roughly hold that all soldiers on either side of a war are legitimate targets, that's one thing, and are entitled to equal moral protections. Okay, so even if you're in some sense on the unjust side, you're entitled to equal moral protections. For example, you're perhaps not supposed to be killed if you're not if it's not necessary to kill you for the strategic goal and so forth. Revisionists respond that soldiers fighting for an unjust cause are culpable for posing an unjust threat and therefore enjoy no moral protections. Okay, so the idea here is traditional just war theory in Jus in Bello treats just and unjust combatants, people on the self-defense side and people on the attacking side, as sort of morally on a par, even though some of them are just combatants fighting a just war for their country and some of them are unjust. And revisionists say no, that we could distinguish just combatants fighting for the good side and unjust combatants for the bad side, and treat them differently. Okay. Here's another interesting issue. I'm calling this "War Doesn't Change the Moral Rules." Again, another quotation from that Jenkins article. Others are questioning soldiers' de facto license to inflict deadly violence on one another. In law enforcement, we typically think that police are required to warn offenders or give them an opportunity to surrender before targeting them with force, before targeting them. Revisionists argue that our moral duties to one another can't be changed significantly just by having our leaders declare a state of war. Thus, we need more reason than we usually think to simply kill enemy soldiers. Okay, so there's a host of complicated issues here, but I mean, this might involve signaling an attack before your side attacks, according to this sort of revision, if it's correct. This has to do with sort of a debate between collectivists. Collectivists kind of think that war changes everything. In some sense, what would be moral, what would have one moral status in civilian life might have a different moral status during wartime simply because of the fact that there's a war going on. Other people are individualists. They think war can't change the moral rules. Okay, and this revisionist argument here is coming from the individualist side. Our moral duties to one another can't be changed significantly just because our leaders declare a state of war. Okay, and one final thing. See, it's going to be the end. One possible result, another quotation, of the revisionist arguments is that the position of contingent pacifism seems to be rising in popularity. A contingent pacifist believes that war can be justified, but perhaps or probably never actually is. As revisionists offer arguments for a host of new moral restraints on warfare, some philosophers have begun to appreciate how very unlikely it is that any war will meet this burden. Okay, a lot of us think that the United States declaration of war, I guess, against Japan in World War II at first, was the paradigm example of a just war. But this issue of contingent pacifism, which says, yes, in theory, a just war is possible, but in practice, there have been very few or none just wars in actuality, is the position of contingent pacifism. In any case, if you've watched this, I hope you've enjoyed it, got something out of it, and I hope you have a wonderful summer. I wish you all the best in whatever you're going to do over the summer. Stay healthy, stay safe, and wishing you all the best, not only this summer, but as things proceed into the future.